Emma stared out the rain-streaked window, her reflection a ghost against the grey cityscape. The city outside was a blur of motion and life, a stark contrast to the stillness that had settled in her heart. She could see the faint outlines of people hurrying by, umbrellas clutched tightly, their lives moving forward while hers seemed to be stuck in a loop of sorrow and regret. Their apartment, once a haven of shared dreams, now echoed with the silence of their shattered love. The walls, which had once been filled with laughter and whispered secrets, now seemed to close in on her, suffocating her with memories of what once was. The photographs on the mantel, the books on the shelves, all remnants of a life they had built together, now felt like relics of a bygone era. Noah's side of the bed remained untouched, the sheets still rumpled from his hasty departure a week ago. She could still smell his cologne on the pillow, a scent that once brought comfort but now only served as a painful reminder of his absence. Every night she found herself reaching out to the empty space beside her, only to be met with the cold, unyielding reality of his departure. The distance between them, once a mere physical separation, had morphed into a chasm of unspoken hurt and resentment. They had become strangers living under the same roof, their conversations reduced to monosyllabic exchanges and awkward silences. The love that had once burned so brightly between them had been extinguished, leaving behind only the smouldering ashes of their broken dreams. Their fights, once passionate bursts of frustration, had become a bitter symphony of blame and accusations. Each argument left them more wounded, more distant, until they could no longer remember what they were fighting for. The words they hurled at each other were like daggers, each one cutting deeper than the last, leaving scars that would never fully heal. Each sharp word, a nail, hammered into the coffin of their once vibrant connection. The love that had once been their sanctuary had become a battlefield, and they were both casualties of a war they never wanted to fight. The dreams they had built together were now buried under the weight of their unspoken grievances and unmet expectations. Emma traced the outline of a heart into the condensation on the window pane, her fingertip blurring the lines between love and loss. The simple act brought back a flood of memories, each one more painful than the last. She remembered the nights they had spent talking until dawn, the plans they had made for the future, and the promises they had whispered to each other in the dark. Now those promises felt like empty words, lost in the void between them. How had they arrived at this desolate crossroad? Their love a faded map leading to nowhere. The path they had once walked together had diverged, leaving them both lost and alone. Emma stood at the intersection, unsure of which direction to take, her heart heavy with the weight of their broken dreams. She wondered if there was a way back, or if they were destined to remain adrift, forever searching for what they had lost. The memories, once a source of comfort, now pricked at her with a bittersweet ache. Each photograph she held told a story of happier times, of moments filled with love and laughter, but now those moments felt like distant echoes, their joy overshadowed by the pain of their present reality. She longed to go back to relive those days, but she knew that the past was a place she could never return to. Their first awkward date, filled with nervous laughter and stolen glances, seemed like a lifetime ago. They had been so full of hope, so certain that they were meant to be together. The connection they had felt that night had been electric, a spark that had ignited a fire in both of them. But now that fire had burned out, leaving only the cold ashes of their broken relationship. The way Noah's hand fit perfectly in hers, a silent promise of forever, now felt like a cruel joke. She remembered the way he used to hold her, the way his touch had made her feel safe and loved. But now that touch was a distant memory, replaced by the cold reality of their separation. The promise of forever had been broken, and she was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered heart. The shared dreams whispered in the dead of night, their hopes and aspirations intertwined like ivy climbing towards the sun, now felt like distant fantasies. They had talked about their future, about the life they wanted to build together, but those dreams had withered in the harsh light of reality. The ivy that had once climbed so high had been cut down, leaving only the bare, twisted branches of their broken dreams. Now those memories felt like faded photographs, their colors muted by the passage of time and the weight of their unspoken pain. Each image was a reminder of what they had lost, of the love that had once been so vibrant and full of life. But now that love was a distant memory, a ghost that haunted her every waking moment. She knew that she had to let go, to move on, but the pain of their broken dreams was a weight she could not yet bear to lift. Emma reached for her journal, its worn leather cover a familiar comfort in the midst of her emotional storm. The journal had been her companion for years, a silent keeper of her deepest thoughts and feelings. It was more than just a book, it was a sanctuary where she could be her true self without fear of judgment. The lined pages had become her confidant, a silent witness to the unraveling of her heart. Each page was a canvas where she painted her emotions, a place where she could pour out her soul and find solace in the act of writing. The journal was her refuge, a place where she could escape from the chaos of the outside world and find peace within herself. With each stroke of her pen, she chipped away at the walls she had built around herself, revealing the raw vulnerability beneath. Writing was a cathartic process, a way for her to confront her fears and insecurities head-on. It was through this act of self-expression that she began to understand herself better, to see the patterns in her thoughts and behaviors that had been holding her back. "I am lost," she wrote, the words a shaky scrawl across the page. These words were a reflection of her inner turmoil, a cry for help in the midst of her confusion. But they were also a starting point, a place from which she could begin to rebuild herself. By acknowledging her feelings of being lost, she was taking the first step towards finding her way again, lost in the labyrinth of our broken promises and unspoken expectations. The journal entries were a testament to the complexities of her relationships, the unfulfilled promises and the silent expectations that had weighed her down. Through writing, she was able to untangle these threads, to see the truth of her experiences and to begin the process of healing. Writing had become her lifeline, a way to untangle the knotted threads of her emotions and make sense of the chaos that had become her life. It was a way for her to process her experiences, to find clarity in the midst of confusion. Each entry was a step towards understanding herself better, towards finding a sense of peace and acceptance. As days turned into weeks, Emma's journal entries became a tapestry of self-discovery. Each page was a piece of the puzzle, a step towards understanding herself better. She wrote about her dreams and fears, her hopes and disappointments. Through this process, she began to see herself more clearly, to understand the person she was and the person she wanted to become. She explored the roots of her insecurities, the fear of abandonment that whispered in the shadows of her heart. These fears had been a constant presence in her life, shaping her actions and decisions. By writing about them, she was able to confront them, to see them for what they were, and to begin the process of letting them go. She wrote about her need to please, her tendency to shrink herself down, to fit into the mold of someone else's expectations. These realizations were painful, but they were also liberating. By acknowledging these patterns, she was able to start breaking free from them, to begin the process of becoming her true self. And slowly, through the act of writing, she began to understand that true love required her to embrace her authentic self, flaws and all. It was a journey of self-discovery, a process of learning to love herself for who she was, not who she thought she should be. Through her journal, Emma found a sanctuary where she could be her true self, a place where she could heal and grow. And in doing so, she discovered the strength and courage to face the world with a newfound sense of confidence and self-acceptance. Miles away, in a sparsely furnished apartment, Noah wrestled with his own demons. The room was a reflection of his inner turmoil, bare and devoid of warmth, much like his current state of mind. The walls seemed to close in on him, amplifying the silence that followed the storm of their argument. He paced the confines of his small living space, the silence deafening in the wake of their explosive argument. Each step he took felt heavy, burdened by the weight of unspoken words and unresolved emotions. The echoes of their fight reverberated in his mind, each accusation a dagger to his heart. He had always prided himself on his strength, his ability to remain stoic in the face of adversity. To the outside world, he was a pillar of resilience, unyielding and steadfast. But inside he was crumbling, the facade of strength barely holding together the fragments of his true self. But Emma's tears, the raw pain in her voice, had cracked his carefully constructed facade, revealing the scared boy hiding beneath. Her words had pierced through his armor, exposing the vulnerability he had tried so hard to conceal. He could no longer hide behind the mask of indifference. He thought about her words, the accusations that stung with the sharp edge of truth. Each one was a mirror reflecting his deepest fears and insecurities. He had always known, deep down, that he was holding back, but hearing it from her made it impossible to ignore. "You're never really here, Noah," she had said, her voice trembling with unshed tears. "Not fully." Her words were a haunting reminder of his emotional absence, a truth he had tried to bury under layers of detachment. He could see the pain in her eyes, the longing for a connection he was too afraid to give. "It's like you're always holding back, keeping a part of yourself hidden away." Her voice echoed in his mind, each word a painful reminder of his emotional barriers. He had always believed that keeping a part of himself hidden was a way to protect his heart, but now he realized it was a barrier to true intimacy. Her words echoed in the silence of his apartment, forcing him to confront the walls he had so carefully erected around his heart. The walls that once provided a sense of security now felt like a prison, trapping him in a cycle of loneliness and isolation. He could no longer ignore the impact of his emotional distance. Noah had always equated vulnerability with weakness, a dangerous vulnerability that threatened to expose him to the possibility of getting hurt. But now, he realized that his fear of vulnerability had cost him the very thing he desired most, a deep, meaningful connection with Emma. The pain of their argument was a wake-up call, a reminder that his walls were not protecting him, but isolating him. He had built his life around the belief that emotional distance was a shield, a way to protect himself from the pain of intimacy. But now, he saw that this shield was also a barrier, preventing him from experiencing the fullness of love and connection. He had to confront his fears and dismantle the walls he had built. But as he replayed the wreckage of their last fight, he realized that his walls, built with the intention of protecting him, had become a prison, isolating him from the very love he craved. The argument was a turning point, a moment of clarity that forced him to confront the reality of his emotional barriers. He knew that if he wanted to rebuild his relationship with Emma, he had to start by tearing down the walls within himself. Weeks later, fate intervened in the form of a chance encounter at their favorite coffee shop. Emma, lost in the pages of a book, didn't notice Noah enter. He paused at the doorway, his gaze drawn to her familiar silhouette. She looked different, he thought, a newfound sense of confidence radiating from her. He hesitated, unsure whether to approach. The memory of their last encounter, the bitter taste of their unspoken words, lingered between them. But as he watched her, a wave of longing washed over him, a yearning for the connection they had lost. Gathering his courage, Noah made his way towards her table. Emma looked up, startled, as a shadow fell across her book. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the world around them seemed to fade away. The noise of the coffee shop, the clatter of dishes, the murmur of conversations, all receded into the background. All that remained was the silent intensity of their shared gaze, a flicker of hope igniting in the ashes of their broken promises.